everyone. Welcome to the Hair Like Hers podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
We have a very interesting chat ahead that I have personally been dying to have because it's about hormones and menstruation. And well, I think as life goes on, we have more and more questions regarding these things. And not only does it appeal to every woman, but a lot of these things are tied into hair, of course, as we know. So I can't wait to touch on these amazing questions that we have coming up and also eventually tie things to hair and the experiences that you've had with hair and how you've helped people and connections that you've made.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's dive in.
Okay, awesome. We're going to start with, what does a normal period look like? Let's just get to the basics.
Yeah, this is such a great question because believe it or not, I feel like, so I only work with women, and I feel like the thing that happens to us the most is that we are constantly getting our period. And the thing that we're out of touch with the most is actually what a healthy cycle looks like. So a healthy cycle, I would say, is broken up into, some people will break it into 2 parts, or some people will break it into 4. I really like to break it into 2 parts because it's the easiest when you're first getting familiar with your cycle. So I would say that it starts with your follicular phase, your first phase of your cycle. And that would be from period to ovulation. And ovulation is kind of what breaks up your cycle. And it will go from this first half to the second half. So follicular phase, your first half, ovulation happens. And then your last half is your luteal phase, And what a normal period should look like is in your follicular phase. This is the first half of your cycle. You're estrogen dominant here. So many women that, I guess a healthy cycle, let me talk through what that looks like first. Estrogen begins to rise in the first half of your cycle. And then this is typically around 10 to 23 days. So you may hear like, oh, every woman ovulates on cycle day 14. Sometimes we have period apps that predict our cycle. Predict our ovulation in our cycle, which tends to be around 14, 15 days. But every woman is a little bit different. I know that I ovulate between 18 and 21 days. And that's really just, it can be multiple factors, which we'll talk about in a second. But so 10 to 23 days, and really what's defining the follicular phase is ovulation. When ovulation occurs, that is the end of your follicular phase, the beginning of your luteal phase. I often, especially as we're talking about hair, and women are very focused on wanting to make sure that, they're either looking for answers with their hair or they're looking for answers with just, what could be going wrong. This is where, have you ever heard of fertility awareness method?
No.
Okay, so fertility awareness method is an option of a form of birth control. I call it body literacy. It personally is my favorite because of the fact that you become so familiar with your body. You know when you're ovulating, when you're not ovulating, your cycle length as a whole, what's healthy, what's not healthy. But the best part is you can actually keep track of how your thyroid is doing based on the fertility awareness method. So here's the quick history of it without going into too much of the weeds, but there is an endocrinologist. His name was Dr. Brada Barnes. Back in the day, most endocrinologists did this, where they did oral temps to keep track of your thyroid health. Now, the reason I'm talking about thyroid health is because we know a lot of the times when people have their hair thinning and falling out, or eyebrows thinning or falling out, we know that's often tied to thyroid. So if you're seeing that, you can actually check to see how your thyroid is doing by waking up first thing in the morning and putting an oral thermometer. So should be oral. It shouldn't be like the Ava bracelet or Temp Drop, anything that you wear. You shouldn't be using it for an Apple Watch. It does matter that it's an oral thermometer, and you wake up first thing in the morning, should be the same time every day. And then you press on and you record that. Like I like to record it in an app called Kindara, but there's tons of apps, as we know.
I'm going to take back what I said. I do know what fertility awareness method is. I'm using natural cycles.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's just like another
way. Didn't know that was what you call it. And now I realize I'm doing that. Okay.
Yes. The name of it is a little bit different depending on how much focus is on cervical mucus and basal body temperature. Everything's a little bit different, but it's similar to what you're doing. You're looking for cervical mucus, oral temperature, and maybe cervical position as well.
Right. Okay. And then they also have the LH tests, the strips.
Yes. Yeah. They, I don't rely too much on the LH strips, although I think they can be amazing just because somebody with PCOS can have LH. It looks like they have LH surges throughout the month when they don't actually. So I tend to recommend cervical mucus because, which we'll again talk about in a healthy cycle, but you'll have cervical mucus, and then even cervical positions will show, like you can internally check to see where your cervical position is to see if you're getting ready for ovulating or not, because your body will open up or not.
Okay.
So if you're looking for thyroid health and is my hair falling out because of my thyroid health, you can look to your cycle because of the fact that during your follicular phase, that first half, your period to ovulation, your basal body temperature, meaning that first temperature in the morning, should be 97.6. Again, endocrinologists actually used to use this before blood serum tests were even available. And I still recommend it beyond blood serum tests because blood serum tests for thyroid health is really wonderful, but it's just the highway to where thyroid hormone is going. It's not showing how every cell is using thyroid hormone. So in many cases, I'll have a client that has thinning hair, thinning eyebrows, low basal body temperature, meaning that it's below 97.6 in their first half of their cycle. And their blood work looks, quote, normal, but we see that their overall metabolic system or their thyroid system is functioning low. And we can see that in their oral temperature. So how I'm going to combat that is focusing on nourishing the thyroid. And then as a result, we wind up seeing like the really pretty hair, the eyebrows growing back, because we can't just rely on blood serum tests.
Okay, so hang on 1 second. So I want to make sure I'm following you.
Yes,
so you're saying that we can check for thyroid imbalances through the oral thermometer.
Correct.
And so if it is below 97.6 in the first half of your cycle, then you have low thyroid?
Yeah, that would be an indication that your thyroid is not working optimally.
That's incredible. And so would it be any point of that first half of your cycle showing 97.6 below that? Or would it have to be like, a continuous amount of days? Like when should one,
Great question. It would be a continuous amount of days. So in average, most of your temperature should be 97.6, below 97.6. If you're thinking you have subclinical hypothyroidism, meaning thyroid's not working optimally. There are things that can throw off your basal body temperature. If you've had alcohol the night before, if you've worked out too much. So I actually use this for clients that is your body's too stressed to work out? Like, do you need to cut back on the HIIT training because it'll show up in your basal body temperature, and traveling. So those things can take place. So this is what we're not doing ever is we're not looking at 1 month and ever saying like, this is what I think is happening. We're always looking at the body, correlating symptoms. Like I said, low thyroid often is eyebrows thinning, hair thinning. You can be have an inability to gain weight or lose weight. And then your fingers, nose, toes, typically cold. And on a consistent basis, your basal body temperature is running low.
Right. Okay. That's such an interesting connection. I've never known that you could find out just from your temperature.
Yeah. I would strongly suggest if anybody wants to learn more about this, there's a book called oh my goodness, I'm going to butcher the name a little bit of the title, but I think it's called The Undiagnosed Disease Hypothyroidism. And it's by Dr. Broda, Broda Barnes. It's absolutely phenomenal, especially if anybody is listening to your podcast as far as like a hairdresser or another practitioner that's wanting to understand hair loss more. This would be a really good option for them because they can understand how to articulate to their clients how to utilize this as a tool. Of course, it's never diagnosing, it's never treating, but it's a tool to say, okay, there's there's dysfunction going on in my body and it's correlating to the symptoms that I'm feeling.
And so, and it's important, like, I like that you touched on the fact how important it is to be consistent with it, because I know like the app that I'm using, it says like, don't move, like just as soon as you're like, you wake up, put that thermometer, you know, under your tongue, no alcohol, you should have slept regularly. Like it's such a sensitive measurement.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I'm glad you talked about sleep. If you're postpartum and you have a new baby, then it's probably not something I would. Postpartum in general, you're losing anywhere from 10 to 30% of your minerals. When you lose minerals, we need that for high quality hair, for our hair to look, beautiful. So it may be mineral loss versus hypothyroidism, or it could be that your thyroid just took a hit. It was a big stress on the body. And when by focusing on replenishing the nutrients, which we'll talk about, your hair could get better. What I wouldn't do is stress about taking your basal body temperature postpartum, because of the fact that like you're a new mom, you are absolutely waking up in the middle of the night. We already know it's a stressful season. It's also a beautiful season, but the lack of sleep that you're getting is definitely going to have some impact on our body. Our bodies are resilient enough if we take preventative care and do preconception nutrition and focus on mineral balance beforehand, it'll take less of a hit. But if we didn't get a chance to and we got pregnant, I would just say, don't stress about it. Just keep in mind that that's an option that you can use once the baby's sleeping through the night, and focusing on some of the food first approaches that we'll talk about here will be a good option.
Got it. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's just so interesting because you're realizing how many factors go into play here. Like every single element of your life is going to have an effect. And you have to be aware of that, how like not getting sleep every night isn't normal. And like, so your body's going to act out, and how we go through different cycles and different stages and how things are going to change. But I love this, like taking, matters into your own hand approach of, like you said, understanding your own body.
Yeah.
Like why weren't we raised? Why weren't not, I don't want to say raised. Why weren't we taught to do that?
It's so frustrating to me. I don't know. Did you ever read the book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility?
No, I've never.
If you're a woman, that needs to be the first thing that you read before anything else, because it's a very thick book. I enjoy reading. I wouldn't say I'm like a great reader.
Yeah.
I read that book in 2 days because I could not stop. I was so taken in with the fact that I was so unaware of my body and things that I didn't know were normal, like cervical mucus or discharge, that I always felt a little embarrassed about, were actually a sign of health and a sign of just my body doing really amazing things, prepping for a body that may or may not, a pregnancy that may or may not be happening. But the fact that fertility and is not just about getting pregnant. It's literally a fifth vital sign. It's a window into our health. And when we have a healthy body, we have a healthy cycle. And it just is so empowering. I mean, my poor husband will have people over and someone will say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on my period." Or like, "I'm so moody." I'm like, "That's not normal. Let's," and then,
it's a full blown fertility.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He'll be like, "Can you just not talk about cervical mucus tonight?" I'm like, her husband should be okay with cervical mucus too, honey. So
that's right. Like, hello, like this isn't, I love what you just said. Fertility is not just about getting pregnant.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. It's a fifth vital sign.
Okay. Let's talk about,
ovulation, kind of where we left off.
Yeah. Let's talk about ovulation.
Yeah. So we just talked about the first half of the cycle and what that looks like. Ovulation is, again, what kind of separates the follicular to the luteal phase. Ovulation, ladies, is so, so important. And I do want to mention, when we're on birth control, we are not ovulating. It actually puts our body into almost a menopause. Right. The reason that ovulation is so important, it's like the main event in your whole monthly cycle. It strengthens your bones, your heart, your brain. This is where you're making progesterone. So progesterone and thyroid hormone go hand in hand. You need enough thyroid hormone and progesterone hormone to have beautiful hair and your hormones working optimally, to oppose some of these excess estrogen or estrogen dominant symptoms that we can feel, which may come up like PMS or breast tenderness or mood swings. And ovulation is often where, we can, well, actually, I want to explain this part first. Ovulation happens one day. So we ovulate one day, but we do have a fertile window, meaning we are able to get pregnant anywhere from 2 to 7 days. What is happening during that phase is our body's producing something called cervical mucus, or cervical fluid, or discharge. I just call it cervical mucus. And so what that is it's a type of estrogen that leaks from our body, and its job is to capture the sperm, take the sperm where it needs to go, and it actually feeds the sperm. So it has a lot of function to it. And whether you're trying to get pregnant or not, it is a sign of health that you are producing enough cervical mucus and that your body's producing enough estrogen appropriately to basically, again, capture the sperm and take it where it needs to go. So if you're like, I'm not trying to get pregnant, I don't want this, those are the times where you would avoid having sex, because anytime there's cervical mucus, its job is to, again, capture the sperm and take it where it needs to go. So it's really clear once we become empowered and gain body literacy of when we're able to use this as a form of birth control or to get pregnant. But what happens is when we have dysfunction in our body, we'll actually delay ovulation. So I have people that will say, I have such long cycles. It's 40 days, it's 50 days. Well, that's because there's some kind of stressor going on in your body that's delaying ovulation. Your follicular phase is going longer because you haven't ovulated yet. Your luteal phase is fixed. It won't go longer. It's not the luteal phase. It's not the last half of your cycle. It's the first half of your cycle. So we have to figure out, how do we get your body safe enough to feel like it can ovulate? Whether or not you're trying to get pregnant, that's massively important, because during ovulation, again, strengthens your bones, your heart, and your brain. It's kind of like we're banking and collecting all of those health benefits. And when we're not ovulating, we're actually losing those bank benefits. That's where a lot of women can have osteoporosis as well.
Interesting. Like, okay, sure. So like repeated, like, delays in your ovulation, or like deleted
not
and that's like
not ovulating altogether, being on birth control. And I was on birth control for 12 years. So there was a lot of support that I needed to do post birth control. But it's really important for us to know that ovulating is really important. And it's not just because we're trying to make a baby. It's for the purpose of strengthening our bones, our heart, and our brain.
right. And also, I mean, like, if you do have a type of delayed ovulation, then your period's getting delayed also, right?
So yeah, so it's your yes, exactly. That's what's going to make your cycle longer, is that you're delaying or the ovulation is feeling threatened enough where it cannot. And so what would threaten ovulation?
Yeah.
Could be alcohol, could be traveling, could be food sensitivities. It could be something called iron overload. And it could be low functioning thyroid. So it could be something called PCOS. So
Right.
there's lots of different reasons where our body wouldn't ovulate, but our goal as women should always be to get our body ovulating, because we know how important it is to have a high functioning thyroid or metabolic system. And I want to be quickly tie those two together. Thyroid and metabolic system. When I'm talking about the metabolic system, I'm not talking about like metabolism as in losing weight. The
Right.
thyroid and metabolic system works together as a whole, impacts our hormones, our digestive system, our immune system, our ability to utilize nutrients. So when I'm saying a high functioning thyroid, I'm not just talking about that losing weight, hair doing well. I'm also talking about being able to digest and utilize nutrients as well. So thyroid and metabolic system, I'm using those interchangeably.
Okay, right. Got it. So that's like a major overview.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, interesting. All right. So these things that threaten ovulation, somebody can just, recognize it easily themselves and realize that maybe they've had a high stress kind of period in their life. What is the iron overload? How would you know if you have iron overload?
Yes, that's such a great question. So this is going to be a new topic for a lot of people to hear. But somebody with iron overload would have been diagnosed anemic. So if you've ever been diagnosed anemic in your life,
never know.
Yeah.
I had doctors think I was anemic for different reasons, but no, I've never had it, never diagnosed.
Yeah. So if any listeners like, oh my gosh, I've been diagnosed with anemia, I've had to get on iron supplements. If you've ever had iron infusions, if you've ever been on birth control, taking iron supplements, grown up on iron fortified foods, that's like cereals, breads. So the point is that most of us have some kind of iron overload. The reason being is that most women have been on birth control. Most of us have grown up on cereals, breads, bagels, pastas, things like that, that have enriched iron in them. And a lot of us have been diagnosed with anemia and then supplemented with iron. So what happens is that our body has a natural iron recycling system. And one of the ways that women will recycle that iron is through our menstrual cycle. We'll bleed out some of the iron. So that's how we're constantly making sure that we're moving iron appropriately in our body, metabolizing it well. When somebody has iron dysregulation, it will show up as low blood iron in blood tests. It'll show up as low ferritin, hemoglobin levels. And really what's happening is that it's not necessarily low, right? We listed all those things that most of us have participated in: birth control, iron fortified foods, taking iron supplements, whatever it is. It's more that we're missing minerals to appropriately move iron. What happens is iron gets stuck in the tissues. It gets stuck in the tissues because we do not have a mineral called bioavailable copper, which is found in like beef liver, organ meats, bee pollen, shellfish, whole food vitamin C. A lot of us are afraid to drink orange juice because of the sugar. That has a lot of high quality orange juice, has a lot of copper in there. So what happens is that copper.
You're telling me a lot of animal product. Also.
A lot of animal products.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The other thing that we need is retinol, which is also found in a lot of animal products.
Okay.
Retinol, I always say, is like the mommy. Retinol pushes copper into the cells. It's like, go, 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 copper, go where you need to go. And copper goes into the tissues of the cells and then releases iron so iron can get to the bloodstream. When iron cannot be released because it does not have vitamin A, retinol, or copper, it gets stuck. So when we have stuck iron in the tissues, we have something called oxidative stress or inflammation. This is the number one thing I see when I see clients with low thyroid functioning and hair loss. The reason being is that when we have iron dysregulation, we have inflammation. We also have malabsorption of nutrients like retinol. Retinol is needed for thyroid hormone. It's part of a conversion that happens in your liver, T4 to T3. That's almost where 80% of the thyroid hormone converts to the most active form of thyroid hormone. Okay. Retinol, vitamin A is needed for that. And then so is copper, bioavailable copper, which we would only find in food. Both of these we would never supplement with.
Okay. So I guess this is just digging further into why a lot of vegans and vegetarians suffer from iron issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like,
it's a hard topic to talk about because I know a lot of people are so frustrated with like maybe how animal care is and things like that. That's why I strongly encourage you to always go to local farmers. Right. Always support your local farmers. They are doing the hard work of supporting and taking care of just how, animals should be treated and things like that for our nutrients.
Yeah, I know it is such a tough thing that's happening. And there's so many people that are trying to avoid eating animal products and cutting back, even if they're not completely vegan. And it's like, what do you do? How do you supplement the right way to make sure that your body's functioning? But it's just tough when you keep learning about these things that are easily, acquired through eating animal protein.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's scary because we can't supplement. We can't just supplement because what we learn is once we understand minerals, which is really where my heart comes from when I'm talking about supporting the body, because minerals work either synergistically or antagonistically. For example, if we've ever taken zinc for immune health or anything like that with this past 2020 that has happened, it actually depletes copper. Again, copper is needed for moving iron appropriately. Actually, copper in general, bioavailable copper, and I say bioavailable because I'm saying I'm not supplementing with it. I'm getting it in food sources. It runs almost every enzyme in the body except for 4. Enzymes run hormones. Hormones run, and then hormones, do all the things that we know to do: digestion, thyroid, period, all those things. The last thing I want to mention about iron overload, because I know this is a lot of information for people that are like, hold on a second, I'm just trying to figure out what foods you said for bioavailable copper.
Yeah.
And I know it is. I just want people to have an understanding of why I'm explaining it and why it's not that I'm saying that there's anemia, because I don't believe there's actual anemia. I believe that there's iron dysregulation. The last point of this is that when there's iron stuck in the tissues, what will happen is estrogen, which is an antioxidant, will come to the iron in the tissues and try to support inflammation. Estrogen gets stuck in the tissues as well. This creates estrogen dominance. So when we see PCOS, endometriosis, low functioning thyroid due to stress, hormonal imbalances, we have to also look at, are we getting the minerals to move iron? And is iron getting stuck in the tissues? And therefore, as a result, estrogen is coming to try to compensate and creating more of an estrogen dominance in the body. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So iron will get stuck in the body because, let's say, for whatever nutrients you're taking that are depleting it, or depleting like for whatever is required for the function of iron to move. Okay. Yeah. That gets stuck, and then estrogen comes to the help, and that's what also gets stuck in tissues.
Exactly. That's what creates estrogen dominance, where we have those symptoms like PMS. It can be such a stressor that it lowers the thyroid function, and can be very problematic that we see in our cycle: heavy periods, clotting, things like that. So
what happens is, sorry, Meg, just so I can stay on this like track, because I really like where this is going, because first of all, PCOS is major, and endometriosis, like I am hearing so much more about these two things. And then at the same time though, like if anyone's gone to like maybe a not so inspired OB that will simply overlook things and tell you that you're perfectly fine, even though I think we all know better than anybody when something is off or wrong. This is really interesting because endometriosis, for example, like, isn't that when like you have like tissues stuck? And
correct. Yeah. And there's multiple, I guess, diagnoses when you could say. Yeah. So it could be from like past surgeries, even where, tissues can contribute to the endometriosis, but more often than not, what I'm seeing is estrogen dominance causing the endometriosis and inflammation from there.
So we can reverse this effect.
Yes, absolutely. We can absolutely.
So you can free the trapped estrogen and the trapped kind of iron and all that.
Yeah. Same thing with PCOS. We can really put that into remission and have clients ovulating on a regular basis. You know, because I work with women, I have women from just digestive issues to PCOS to trying to get pregnant. And so some of them with PCOS are not ovulating. They can't get pregnant. So what we have to work on is addressing the estrogen dominance, and then also something called blood sugar dysregulation, which is a huge factor rather in endometriosis.
Okay. Oh my God, there's so many layers.
I know. But here, the most simple thing I would say for someone that's starting to get very overwhelmed and like, I just don't know how to kind of, this is really hard for me to hear. It's overwhelming. I need to hear it multiple times.
Yeah.
The best thing is that at the very end of this, in a second, once I get through the luteal phase, I will answer how to eat properly to mitigate these issues and these concerns. It really does come a food first approach. There's complicated issues. I like to say this: everybody is a snowflake, right? We're all different, but the way our physiological response works and our biology and all that is actually the same minerals, the same vitamins. We make up the same. We may have taken different paths, so depleted in different areas, but what makes our body function optimally is the same resources. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and this iron overload sounds really scary and you're like, wait, what's an enzyme? No big deal. Just focus on the food first approach that we'll talk about at the end, because that will give you a really big leg up on how to start mitigating some of these inflammation responses and stressors that are impacting your cycle, that are impacting your health and your hair and your skin.
I love that. Okay. What makes our bodies function optimally are the same like requirements.
Yeah. Yeah. All the same minerals and vitamins, they're not unique to individuals. They
Yeah.
are the same in all of us. We need vitamin A, retinol, we need zinc, we need copper, we need magnesium. We need all these vitamins and minerals because they all have the same function at regulating histamines and thyroid and all the things that get, kind of messy when we dive very deep into them. So whether you have all these different diagnoses, have all these different symptoms, can relate to some people, cannot relate to others. We all come from, we're all snowflakes, but at the end of the day, what runs our body is actually the same. And where it's good to resource a one-on-one practitioner is they may be able to pinpoint, it's because you're supplementing with this, or it's because you've taken this, or it's because you have this stressor. So we do need to kind of therapeutically come in and maybe add in more retinol or add in more, I don't know, potassium, something like that. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to spend the money, you don't have the money, focusing on food first approach will always get you to a really great place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like where to start anyways, right? Like
Right.
that's basically the best way to prevent and to nourish yourself. And also like these things take time, right?
It's
Like
the hardest part.
like, right. Like, and I only just know this from hair, because hair is just one of those things that if you're changing your diet and you're taking that much better care of yourself, your hair will start to show, but it takes forever to see the difference because it has to grow and come down and then be long enough to visually see the thickness, the better quality and all that. But it's the same, like even with your body, you're trying to get healthier. Like you might not see that you're getting healthier, but your body's functioning that much better. And then eventually, like 6 months to a year down the line, you'll notice things. But the important thing is that people have to recognize it's a long-term thing.
Yeah, I always say you want to gain the endurance for health. It's going to take endurance. It's going to take time. It's going to be up and down. It's going to be a mental battle. That's where sometimes a support around you can be really helpful, whether that's a nutritional therapist, a hairdresser that understands, a counselor or therapy. I'm massive on that because that's to unload your emotions on somebody that can trust you and give you the tools to cope with that would be massive. And also the biggest part is scheduling and fun. Like schedule and fun in your life and joy, because healing's going to take time. And just like, your hair is going to be the last thing that body cares about. It's going to care about other things happening first. And then towards the end, it's going to say, okay, now I trust the body enough where I can give you the, beautiful lock you're looking for.
Right. That's so true. It's so true. It's such a neglected part of the body. Okay, so let's talk about menstrual pain. Let's talk about ovulation pain and all that stuff. What is all that about? Why do we, PMS harder sometimes? What is that ovulation pain that, I'm hearing so much more about, women are talking so much more about, that you can feel during sex? Why is it different all the time?
Yeah. So somebody that has high estrogen dominance is going to feel either breast tenderness, heavy or painful ovulation, painful periods. And some of them may even feel it from day one of ovulation to their actual period bleed. And then once they're done with their bleeding, actually have 2 weeks of relief, which is that luteal phase. And so it would be a sign of estrogen dominance.
Wow.
We know that estrogen is opposed by progesterone. So when somebody has estrogen dominance, it's a good indication that they're probably not making enough progesterone. So are they ovulating? That would be my first question. If they are ovulating and they're still having these PMS, painful periods, breast tenderness, clotting, endometriosis type pains, things like that, then I would say, let's look into supporting the progesterone. Progesterone is going to, again, oppose estrogen, but it's also a very protective hormone. It will actually help put the body from so there's a main hormone called pregnenolone, and pregnenolone can either make cortisol or progesterone. And so oftentimes our body will make cortisol. It will choose to make this stress hormone over progesterone. So by identifying what stresses there are, whether that's something called dysbiotic bacteria. So in my practice, I do a GI map stool analysis, which essentially we're looking at your overall gut microbiome. We're looking at Is there any H. pylori overgrowths, candida, just overgrowth of bad bacteria, or dysbiosis is what it's called? That can be a stressor, and your body can choose to make more stress hormones over making progesterone.
What causes the body to actually do that?
So
We
that's,
all know cortisol is terrible. We don't want to get stressed out to increase our cortisol levels, but I didn't realize that it's the same hormone responsible for making either one or the other.
yes. Yeah. And your body can make both. Like it's able to make cortisol and progesterone. But what happens is when our body's overloaded with stress, it's going to make more cortisol than it is progesterone. And so it's appropriate to have cortisol. If we're running from a bear, we want to be able to respond. If we need to run out of the road because we have to grab our kid before a bike come and hits it, or him or her, whatever. Like, we want to have those appropriate stress responses. Okay. So what causes our body to become so stressed out that it's not making enough progesterone would be, and this dysbiotic bacteria could be a number of things. Again, trauma. I feel like our mental awareness of like mental illness and trauma as this, millennials and on are becoming very, and not to say that others aren't, I would just say that we're more vocal about it.
We are. I mean, statistically, it started with millennial women. Statistically, the stress gap between men and women has widened so exponentially in our generation.
Wow.
So it was always, historically, women have always just been the more stressed out sex. And by stressed out, we're obviously talking about like bodily function and body, like your overall health. But yeah, no, we widened that gap so much as millennials.
That's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a stat I know very well because, obviously it's tied to hair loss and hair changes and all that.
Absolutely. So if we're not going back and talking about our traumas that we've experienced as a child or stressors that we have as an adult. I had 2 miscarriages. As soon as I had my first miscarriage, I immediately got back into therapy, and I immediately addressed through the heartbreak, the expectations, the fear, because that's a stressor that I don't want my body to hold on to. Not only do I want to be a good mom and a good wife and be present and not trying to just muster up the strength, but also I know what the impact is in my body. And any stressor, whether it's trauma to food sensitivities, eating foods that are causing inflammation, and or taking supplements that are depleting minerals, our body responds the same way. Our digestive system lowers. I think this is actually the best way to say it.
Yeah.
We're running from a bear, right? If we have stressors going on, trauma, food sensitivities, all the things I just mentioned, our body running from the bear is not like, I'm going to properly digest my food right now. It's like, no, I got to run from this bear. This bear's chasing me. Or I'm going to make enough sex hormones to ovulate, to oppose estrogen dominant type symptoms. It's not going to focus on any of that. Instead, it's just going to be like, I'm running from a bear. So those are the things that would lower progesterone as stressors. And again, I think the top most common things are trauma and just not mental illness, whether that's just disappointment, expectations, fear of failure, fear of future, any of that. Counseling and therapy can be so incredibly healing for their body. 2, looking at your GI map, so stool analysis, seeing if there's any kind of gut dysbiosis going on. What causes gut dysbiosis? When the body's under stress, digestion is lowered. We have something called leaky gut. Overgrowths happen. Any stressor from trauma to supplementing wrong can cause our body to go up, high stress and digestion to lower. And then the third thing would be, so what did I just say? I just said digestion, or I just said GI map, trauma, and then, just stages of life. Are you doing really exciting things like moving, planning for a wedding, just had a baby? Those also can be stressors that can impact our hormones that we also have to just have either realistic expectations for, or be really diligent about supporting the minerals during those times of losses in minerals. Anytime we're in stress, we're losing minerals. So we have to be focusing on replenishing them. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it really does. I love that. I mean, you're really like making sense of everything. Everything just ties in together so nicely the way you just explained it. Can we talk about the supplementing incorrectly? Because this is a major thing, right? All the contraindications that come with supplementing, right? Like And I take a gajillion supplements a day. Some of them I've researched and just decided to take on my own. And the majority of them I've had a health practitioner, recommend them according to my blood work and all that. So a lot of is professionally, monitored and taken care of, but contraindications are major, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people supplement on their own and don't realize that they're actually causing damage or removing the effects to begin with.
Correct.
Are there resources for people to know how to take their supplements properly? How do you help people with that? Or what do you recommend?
Yeah, that's I always recommend, unless you have a practitioner looking over you, you really don't blindly supplement. You always take a food first approach. You're always looking for non-hormones, non-antibiotics meat. You're always looking for organic when possible, or better yet, going to a local farmer, Googling local farmer near me and getting resources from your local farmer that's really, aware of the soil and the nutrients that are growing and feeding the foods that you're eating, because nature is always going to have the perfect balance of A and D and copper and zinc. When we supplement, I don't know of a resource other than like going to your local farmer and just focusing on food. I would say my Instagram probably
specifically like the actual supplements that you're taking, right?
Yeah. So
different vitamins and minerals that you can buy anywhere and anybody can take.
I would say when you're looking for a vitamin C, you want to be really careful, because a lot of vitamin C is almost every vitamin C you look on a supplement, and not every practitioner knows about this, that if it has ascorbic acid,
right,
or if your coconut water has ascorbic acid, that is massively depleting your bioavailable copper. So if you have vitamin C and you look on the back of it, whether it's in an adrenal support, thyroid support, a multivitamin, a prenatal, and it has ascorbic acid, you're depleting bioavailable copper.
Interesting.
What you want to look for instead is like a whole food source. So like Pure Radiance is a brand. They have a pure vitamin C, and you'll see in the back of it has like, it's just food listed. Beets. I don't remember honestly what else is in it, but it's just foods.
It's just food items.
It's not ascorbic acid. The other thing that many people supplement, as I already mentioned, was zinc. So many people are trying to support either sperm health for their partner, egg health for theirs, if they're looking for fertility health, or just immune support, and they're supplementing with zinc. Zinc also depletes bioavailable copper. Again, bioavailable copper is running about every enzyme in your body except for 4. That's a huge deal. The other thing that's going to be really hard for people to hear.
What's that?
Vitamin D.
Oh God.
So the reason why I don't recommend ever supplementing with a vitamin D, instead focusing on like maybe a cod liver oil supplement instead, like a Rosetta, which is a high source of monosaturated fat. Because when you supplement with D alone, it actually will disrupt the absorption of retinol and the utilization. So the metabolic pathway of retinol in our body. We need retinol to push copper. It's the mommy to the copper, push copper where it needs to go. Also for thyroid health. So when we're mega dosing with vitamin D, I would say anything over 2000 for a long period of time, there's a good indication there's a good chance that when you take a blood serum test and you look at your retinol status, it's going to be very low. And it can take years to replenish that if we've supplemented with vitamin D for a long time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, retinol is not even easy to get.
Retinol is easy to get only in food sources. Yeah. If you look at a multivitamin or prenatal or supplement, it'll say beta carotene. Yeah. I think beta carotene has 12 steps it has to take to get to retinol. So it's not effective. What we really want is retinol, which is found in beef liver, eggs, milk, organ meat, red meat. There's a bunch of other things I just can't think of right now.
Yeah. Okay. So, wow, that's really interesting because vitamin D is a major one. And then also vitamin D deficiency it's linked to hair loss also. So that could mean that someone isn't necessarily low on vitamin D, but that it's disrupting their absorption of retinol.
Yes.
Which then is affecting their iron. I'm learning. Yes. I'm here to learn. Okay. Yes. I don't know about everybody else, but like that is
it's a roadmap.
this is, I mean, there's nothing more important, right? Like I like to be personally empowered to make my own decisions. I trust experts like yourself. And but at the end of the day, like I know what I'm doing every day. I know the full picture and you may not. So if I can help the process by listening and
so if someone says that if someone's blood serum test comes back low, first of all, there's different testing, like a low active and storage vitamin D. So we want to be clear on what that is and what we're looking at and the optimal markers. But when we're looking at somebody that says low vitamin D, there's a couple different things that could be going on. One, it could be that it's a poster board for inflammation, meaning that the body's inflamed and it cannot convert the enzymes it needs to make enough vitamin D. So that would be something like in the liver, which we have a lot of thyroid. The liver has over 500 jobs. It converts thyroid hormones. And one of the other things that it does is it converts cholesterol to vitamin D, needing this enzyme or this mineral, magnesium. So it could mean that you're depleted in magnesium.
Right.
And it could be that, that you are so low in retinol that I just did a post about this yesterday. They work at either their biological partners and they either work together or antagonistically. So if you megadose with retinol, it's also going to impact your vitamin D status to lower it as well. So just like megadosing with vitamin D would impact retinol status. So that's why I don't ever isolate most vitamins or minerals. I always take like a food or organ complex because nature, like a cod liver, like I said, Rosetta is a cod liver oil. I personally like that one because it's higher in monosaturated fat, but that comes with a comes with a lot of retinol, but also vitamin D together. So when someone's low potentially on their blood work, what I'm looking at is supporting magnesium. If they're low on their blood work for vitamin D, I'm looking at supporting their magnesium and their retinol and D status and getting it from like a cod liver oil. Their magnesium, I'm usually looking at like a magnesium bicarbonate. That's probably the only supplement that I would probably do isolated that most people can handle, but not everybody. Some people, it's too much if you just start with it and they'll notice like they feel bad.
Okay. So this is really interesting because I do take vitamin D3, K2 every single day because I've been told that it's just so damn important that we don't get enough vitamin D because we're not outside enough and all that. But that's really interesting. I would easily switch over to cod liver oil. Like that's just a natural thing that has no side effects.
It always goes back to food. It's crazy. It always goes back to the simple answers.
Girl, I feel like I can talk to you all day.
I know. And I want to give resources if anybody wants to dive into this more because they're so taken back and it's offensive. When I first learned this information, I was actually I can't help it. I was a little upset because I had been recommending that as a practitioner and I actually went back to school for it because I was so offended that I was like, I have to learn more and prove them wrong. And it changed my heart and my mind and the way I think. So one of the things that you can look at is Morley Robbins. He is a researcher, a nutritional researcher, and he collects research over time. And he just does a good job of organizing it. So I would go to rootcauseprotocol.com where you can start to learn more about that. Root Cause Protocol with Morley Robbins, and you can start diving into the research from there. It's not his research, it's collected researchers and organized. And obviously there's more, but that's just that's a really good resource to start.
Very cool. Okay. So really quickly, can you tell me, okay, so I think we've touched on so many amazing things. I want to finish with this.
You want me to do the luteal phase too really quickly?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It'll be 2 seconds. The luteal phase is the last half of the cycle. This is where progesterone is dominant. In unhealthy cycle, you would have cervical mucus throughout this until your period. Progesterone should be high enough where it dries up cervical mucus where you only have it during ovulation. Okay. I will see a lot of clients that have low progesterone and they have cervical mucus in their luteal phase after ovulation or spotting. This is also where we see spotting, which would be an indication of low progesterone, which impacts thyroid health. And a temperature here in your luteal phase, so after you ovulate, it will be 98.4. So if your temperature is below 98.4, again, it would be similar to what we talked about earlier with the follicular phase where it's too low. The reason the temperature shift is because you have your follicular, you ovulate, progesterone that comes after ovulation actually rises the thyroid. And so therefore basal body temperature. And so it should have an indication of a shift in temperature. And that's all I would really say that's important to know about anything less than 10 days of a luteal phase. So it won't be longer than 16, but if it's less than 10, another sign of low thyroid, low progesterone.
Got it. So if you're anything below 98.4 during the luteal phase, the second phase of your cycle, then it's also the same kind of indications as a low temperature in the first phase.
Yep.
Got it. So see, like there's things that everybody can do right now to find out, potentially to work on. I love that. Okay. Okay, that is so great. And I'm just going to say this super quickly. I don't know if we're going to get cut off at the hour mark, but if it does, I'm going to resend you a link real quick. Okay, one other thing that I wanted to touch on is you as yourself, as the professional, you've done the studies, you've done the research, you've educated yourself, you've worked with people. What is the biggest change you've made in your own life more recently as a result of all that? What would you say Meg does today that never did before and that you will never stop doing?
Yeah. So this is probably going to be weird to hear, but I am a little go-getter. I am a go, go, go type of person. So actually the biggest change I've done is scheduling fun and rest. I don't see a lot of women put up boundaries. I don't see a lot of women put up fun. I see a lot of women that are really strong, chasing after a lot of big things, which is phenomenal. And I would include myself in there. But my most healthy self is actually when I put up boundaries and I enjoy my life and I'm not just chasing my health. Like during my miscarriages, it was really hard to not get caught up on, well, let me look at my lab work. Let me look at this. Let me look at this. And in fact, when I started to relax and have fun, I actually started to heal. So I would say, as hard as that may be to hear and not fun and maybe not overly educational, we are living in a society that is pushing us, and we as women want to achieve so much, which is phenomenal. But if we are not stopping to enjoy our life and put up boundaries, it is going to have a massive impact on our health and our healing process. And the last thing that I would say would just be that always take a food first approach. Always eat foods with less labels. And that's a really good start to optimizing health.
Food with less labels, meaning
not packaged food. So we're not looking at, we're looking at they always say it like you're walking around the grocery store, you're looking at the fruits, the vegetables, and the animal proteins. You're not going in the aisles where it's, has the ingredients on it and the macros and things like that. You're just getting more food with less labels, or like I said, just Googling to where your local farmer is, getting connected with them. It's actually usually so much more easier than we build it up to be. You just usually go up there and pick what you need and get this great relationship, and you feel really great about the fact that you're helping them and you're contributing a lot to your family, and you're almost breaking this cycle of big pharma and big grocery stores really telling us what we can and cannot eat. And instead we're breaking this cycle into something that's really easy. And I will say this, like, I am not the practitioner that's going to make her own bone broth, that's going to make her own sourdough bread. I am busy. I have a toddler. I'm pregnant. My husband is gone all the time right now because of his season of life with school and being a firefighter. I'm going to buy as much as I can, but I'm going to resource what I can locally as first. That's always going to be my first option. I am not the person that's like crunchy granola, making her own stuff. I wish I was. I would love to be.
Time for that.
I don't have time for that. So my reality is that I am purchasing items, but I'm also going to my local farmer first and getting as much as I can. And it's just shopping there instead of the grocery store.
That's great. And you've managed to pull it off by doing that, not relying on the wrong snacks and like the packaged food and all that. Like you're proof of, just being able to buy the right things is going to make everything work out.
Yeah. And if you can, like I said before, sticking to foods that are no hormones when it's meat, grass-fed, really looking to try to eat beef liver. If you can't supplement with it, that's where I started. I started with supplementing with beef liver. It's the Earth's multivitamin. On my page, I talk a lot about it. and sticking to, again, as much as possible, fruits and organic fruits and vegetables that are going to.
Do you make a lot of beef liver? Do you like cook it?
This is going to be hard for people to hear. I eat it raw, frozen.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll freeze it for 3 weeks, and then I will cut it up like a pill size and eat it that way. And that's just to get any parasites out or anything like that. So
you're telling me that the freezing gets the parasites out?
Correct. Yeah. It'll be any bacteria overgrowth or anything like that can happen. And the freezing process will make it safe to be able to eat raw.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I'm going through a whole parasite cleanse thing too. So I'm like avoiding everything raw. That's good to know.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. If you freeze it, that would be the only thing I eat raw. I don't eat anything else raw. And I do like a pill size. So I'm doing a very small amount every day.
That's all it takes.
4 ounces a week. Yes. Mm-hmm. I just don't like the taste of liver. I wish I did. So I would rather chase it with some orange juice in the morning, like a pill. And it saves me money because beef supplements can be like $50 a month, where like if you buy beef liver, it could be like you're paying $60 and you have 3 pounds for a couple, 2 months or 3 months.
That's so interesting. I grew up eating like beef liver. Like my parents didn't.
I wish I did.
My parents did so many things right. I'm just learning about.
That's so great.
The problem was with that. And we're not going to, because I feel like I could have a conversation about kids with you. I don't have kids, but like I would get into it because it's just so important that like, as parents, you got to explain to your kids the benefits of what you're feeding them and why. My parents would be like, eat this. I'd be like, that's gross. And if you don't explain to me why, which they never did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I grew up on Pop-Tarts and honey buns. So no wonder why I had to work through a lot.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I'm like, beef liver sounds great. I should incorporate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, Meg, listen, this is amazing. Thank you for sharing your invaluable information. I have no doubt everyone's going to really love this. It's going to be a hit, this episode. And I'm pretty sure you're gonna have to come back at some point because there's so much more we didn't even get to touch on today.
Yes, absolutely.
Back to the show sometime. Thank you so much. And everybody check her out. She's incredible. A wealth of knowledge, and your Instagram page is awesome. And you also have your own course.
Yes. Yeah, you can work with me one-on-one, which I do include hair tissue mineral analysis, so mineral testing and stool analysis that I talked about earlier. So you could just apply to work with me on my website, meglangston.com, very creative. Or my course is really like the foundations. If you're like, I'm lost in all the weeds, like just tell me where to start. It's the foundations. I give you a shopping list, groceries, recipes. I talk about basal body temperature. I talk about how to check, do all the things I did with your menstrual cycle. And I even have a Facebook group where if you have questions, I always come in and answer. So if you're looking to just get started, you don't want to spend a lot of money, do the rebalance course. Otherwise, yeah, on my Instagram, Meg_Langston, I just have a lot of hopefully free resources that are good, and a free resource on my website to do the basal body temperature too.
Yeah, there's so much info on there. All right, my dear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You're the best.
Yes, it was so much fun. Take care.